other phenomena that are not as crazy as that, but they're in operation all the time.
Yeah, one way of seeing it, maybe a bit cynical, is that if this goes on, the very naive, gullible people, they're gonna get themselves out of the gene pool, right? And the very disagreeable people who don't trust authority are, gonna do fine. I'm doing fine. I hope you too. And then I know a lot of very high IQ people are doing fine, but if you're the kind of high IQ person who does trust the government for whatever reason, then you're probably not doing too well.
Yeah, there's that book we covered on the show a while ago that I'm sure you're familiar with called Exit Voice and Loyalty. And it was using the example of firms and corporations, but it was describing the phenomenon that typically the most high IQ people are the least likely to voice their concerns. And I think that's kind of what you're describing is like if they are high IQ, they have a longer time horizon, they see where things are going, they tend to just leave a situation because they have the ability to marshal their resources and strategize. And so
Right.
you see this even in schools, like when a school district is going wrong, the kids with the smartest parents will just leave instead of fighting for the school. And that's how the school ends up just full of dumb, lazy parents, essentially. Um, and you had raised a good point on your blog, and I'm going to quote this again here too because I really like. Actually, this might have been from your Twitter, but you said, "Oh no, this is in your email, I think." But I liked it. It said, "I don't want to fix the normies or grab power to influence them anymore. We have a hardware problem. The recent advances in genomics are the only thing that give me hope for the future." And I really like that line that we actually have a hardware problem, and that's something that I think a lot of the people on the right just kind of ignore. The bigger tectonic shift there, but we had talked briefly at the start about genetic engineering and whatnot. I was wondering, what about the technological solution makes you a bit more optimistic for the future?
Right. So I've always been kind of pessimistic in general, but COVID really made it much worse for me. I remember going home in Europe in 2020 and seeing people masked in the streets. And going to big cities, the small cities, then to the countryside. And you saw some variety of people. And I was really interested in seeing who refused to be masked, right? And I expected that, in the countryside, I would see, very based salt of the earth types, right? That refused to follow the narrative. But no, I went to the countryside in Europe in a very small fishing town of like 5,000 people, and everybody was masked. It was like 98% compliance. And then it struck me, we really have a hardware problem. People are eating up all this bullshit. We don't need just better IQ, which we do. But there are plenty of high IQ, doctor types who are really, really evil during these years. So we have. I don't want to save these people anymore. We need, yeah, we just need smarter and less gullible, less collectivistic people at the hardware level.
And I see that on the right as well. I think COVID was a huge fracture point for the right. And I still don't think people have really resolved it. There's some people on the dissident right, which is a pretty broad term, obviously, but people who to this day still don't think COVID was a big deal and have made enemies of those who, in their minds, overreacted to COVID. And I think it comes down to the IQ thing, like you had just said, that more than I've ever seen before, I'm seeing people in our scene start to decouple from the mass. Like there's no unity anymore because they're saying, I need to become adjacent to power. I can't be held down by these crazy low IQ schizo people anymore. And
Yeah.
that's the grand fracturing I'm seeing. And I wonder, like I'm trying to map out like where the high performing high IQ people on the right are going to go, because it seems to model itself after what we do in society. Like the high IQ people sort of stratify and become their own entity. And I'm just trying to figure out, if is there a future where high IQ people just leave low IQ people behind and don't even try And because traditionally the high IQ people would try and engineer and gerrymander and control the low IQ people, but you in your mind that era might even be over. Like there's no point with these two groups even participating with each other.
Yeah, I mean, COVID was bad in many ways, and but if say you're an American Trump supporter, right? And then Trump didn't do too well, and now, but Trump still has a lot of support, especially in the grassroots. And now you see Trump selling NFTs on the internet,
Yeah.
and you see the base of the Republican Party is still for him. And what do you do with that information, right? How can you put your time and energy and scarce resources into rallying these people up? Are these your people? How can you feel any kinship towards people who are buying Trump NFTs?
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people. I mean, some people will, but you know, it's really hard to keep the sense of nation and of common destiny after all what's happening, after the demographic replacement, after COVID, after the griftification of the right. So I
Yeah.
see a lot of people just giving up.
I think people are giving up even though they were once idealistic because, once we run up against the wall of just, this is something that even Dunn talks about, that we don't have the same evolutionary pressures. We have people surviving and thriving now who should never have survived and thrived in the past. And they're bringing all their junk DNA and genetics with them. And then if you are on the right and you are some kind of collectivist, some kind of populist, maybe even a fascist, maybe even like Christians are big on this too. Like I don't judge, the lower classes, but even those people I think are pulling their hair out. Like I don't know what to do with these fucking retarded freaks, And I'm
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
getting to that point too. I'm like, for some of these people, I'm like, especially a lot of the people on the right don't actually work, so they don't interface with the public a lot, but once you do, you see some people, like you walk through a Walmart and go, god damn it. Like I'm like, I guess white people have to die now. Like you can walk through the lower classes. Sometimes you're like, I don't know a way out of someone wearing like a SpongeBob SquarePants thong to the store.
Yeah, I mean, being white is just not enough. That's for sure. But yeah, I mean, the locus of loyalty is, I'm pretty sure it's going to change. It made some sense to be a fascist 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago. But after all that's happened and seeing the trend lines, it's just not going to work.
I was going to say, for in the near future, over the next 50 years, I know you're pretty cynical. I'm cynical as well, frankly. I take more of a Nick Landian approach on things where I see the horizon of where technology is leading us, and it's just we need to adapt because it's not going to stop. But I was wondering, do you have any? Maybe it's the genetic engineering thing, but do you have any predictions for the next 10 to 50 years about how bad things could get?
Right. So again, the right is demoralized and just not doing well. The left is batshit insane and it's getting worse. But yeah, we have AI now, which is pretty neat. So if you're a smart guy with some computer knowledge, you'll be able to probably make good money if you have a good idea now. Right? You don't need to hire 100 people from India or anything to make some cool application. And at the more general level, yeah, I mean, we are getting to the place where every selection is already available, even though it's kind of gray zone. So you can have kids and ensure that they're healthy and as smart as you are, at least. And in short notice, we'll be able to just outright change genes in your offspring. So no, and once that cat's out of the bag, once you can make sure that all your children have a 150 IQ and they're 6 foot tall, well, who's not going to do that, right? Because you may have some religious scribbles about it, but you never will not. And eventually, one household will do it, then two, then three. Next thing you know, everybody's doing it.
That's a good point. And I know you probably have to get going soon, but I just have, if you have time, I just have one last question that I was kind of tickling the back of my mind. One thing you had said on your blog was that we discussed this at the beginning, how liberal leadership has traditionally been bad at coordinating itself, which kind of leaves it open for corruption. And speaking of COVID, a lot of people talk about, Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, and the Davos Summit and everything. And a lot of people on our scene dismiss that and they say it's not important and who gives a shit. I don't believe that, obviously. But when I look at that, when I look at the things they're talking about, I wonder if that is just a new way for this sort of elite to coordinate itself on a global scale, because this is sort of new territory for them, and to do it out in the open. And for dissidents and people on the right, kind of the people we've been talking about, the people on the right who maybe have a higher IQ or could actually see what's going on, do you think there's any realistic way for the dissidents or people like ourselves to coordinate together in the same way that the liberals and leftists seem to be coordinating on a global stage right now with Davos and stuff like that? Does that seem like something we can even try to accomplish?
No, the bad guys really want us to try, so they can arrest us all. I just had a friend tell me that